Just 1 minute. Let me start this. Here we go. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes. Yes, you can see.
Good, fantastic. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Okezie. I'm a BA. I currently work as a senior BA. And I'm taking the study class for today, and it's on elicitation and collaboration, right? Which is a major part of the business analyst toolkit. We have a toolkit with loads and loads of tools and techniques, but this is a major one. So I thought it would be nice to delve into it. I know we are made up of a mix where there's a mix of us. There's some of us that are practicing BAs. There's some of us that are studying to take a certification. And so basically, what we're doing today, my approach will basically be tackling this topic from both ends. We're going to be talking as elicitation and collaboration based on the BABOK, which is our single source of truth when it comes to our certifications. But also, there's some of us practicing. And so I also wanted to address this topic from that perspective as well. There will be an avenue to ask questions. If you want to unmute and ask a question while the class is going on, feel free. At the end of the presentation, I'll have a few questions to ask you as well. I hope you don't mind. And if you have questions or comments to ask me as well, I'm happy to take those too. All right, fantastic. So let us jump right in. So, just the overview of what we're going to cover in the next hour is just an introduction, some definitions, the tasks under elicitation and collaboration, stakeholders, tools and techniques, some frequently asked questions, your Q&A, and yeah, that's it really. Okay, so we're going to come to this at the end of the class. But I just want to let you know some of the questions I'm going to be asking you. And hopefully at the end of the session, you have, you'll be able to give me some answers. So the first scenario is Amira has been assigned to lead the elicitation phase for a new client onboarding system. The project sponsor wants quick results, but Amira noticed that key stakeholders have not been consulted. The timeline is really tight, and her project manager is insisting that she just starts collecting requirements. Quick, 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 quick. What are you doing? Let's just start. So, what should she do? That's the first scenario. The second scenario is Tunde, who has facilitated a workshop where the participants have agreed on key requirements. However, 2 weeks later, an influential stakeholder sends an email suggesting something completely different, claiming that the workshop missed some critical details. The rest of the team disagrees, and this feels like it could derail the progress. What action should Tunde take to manage the stakeholder and keep the project aligned? Okay. I'm sure these may seem like similar situations as well. So we'll address them. Keep these scenarios in mind. We'll come back to them again later. So I just mentioned what my tutorial approach is. Definitely, this tutorial is based on the IIBA, the BABOK, for those who are studying for their certification. But I also wanted to introduce an element or some element of real world business analysis practice. I will highlight when I'm saying some of those things so you'll be able to separate them, right? I don't want to confuse you. So, but it's important that we understand some of the things that happen in practice. I was talking to a BA not too long ago, and his question was, wait, so how exactly do I get this? Do I do this elicitation thing? Who am I talking to? Yeah, where are the stakeholders? How do I get them? All of that. So these may be some of the things you're grappling with and you're not exactly sure how to answer. And because this is such a pivotal topic, I just wanted to address some of those things, right? All right, so our introduction. Why is elicitation and collaboration important? Without it, you're just guessing. Let me just put it that way. You're just trying to make do. Analysis is supposed to be precise. It's supposed to be based on data, information. If you don't have the relevant information to your particular project or your situation, you're just guessing and you're going to struggle. So this is really, really important. Yeah, for a BA that we understand this. It's a start of the real work we start doing. The rest is prep work. This is like the actual getting your hands actually dirty, right? So this is elicitation. You're now going to be talking to people. The rest is preparation within yourself, but now you're reaching out to people, talking to them regarding your project. So it's very important that you understand this particular process really, really well, not just for the certification, but also in your work as a BA. And you can guarantee that when you're interviewing for a job as a BA, this is going to come up in one way or the other. Yeah. So I love this visual. Yeah, I know. I don't know how many of you know the internet meme. This is what I ordered and this is what I got. So this is our version of it. As you can see from this image, the first image is what the customer explained that they wanted, right? The next one is what the project leader understood that was wanted. Next one, what the software engineer designed. The next one, what the programmer wrote. Then what the sales executive described it as, how the project was documented. Take note of this one, how the project was documented. It's empty. And that means there's basically no documentation regarding this. All the things, all these different images are just verbal. There's no actual documentation regarding this whole process. Then operations installed this. The customer was billed for that, obviously top, best billing, and the help desk supported that. And this is what the customer really needed, right? So in one way or the other, I'm sure we've come across this scenario where there is such a disconnect between what someone said and what it was eventually delivered. And it just makes things really, really difficult. Everyone's frustrated. It's not good. And that's why the role of the BA is so important, because we drive the process of making sure that the needs and the objectives are adequately captured, documented, verified, validated, approved before it is communicated to the project team and they can start working. So your role before, while everyone is still trying to get themselves sorted, BAs have started working, because we're the ones who provide the information that everyone else needs to work. Everything else is just scattered. We're the ones that bring it together and make sense out of it and document it, which is very, very important. Okay. So some definitions. Okay. Elicitation is the process of drawing out information from stakeholders and other sources to understand what the needs are, business needs, project needs, what the problems are, bottlenecks, your pain points, and what the opportunities are, business improvement opportunities, all kinds of opportunities. So it again, take into account that phrase, drawing out. If you've been practicing as a BA for a while, you see gathering requirements and you see eliciting requirements. It used to be gathering requirements initially. And then after a while, people are like, no, we don't just gather, because gather almost seems very impassive. It looks like people are just, handing you information. And that's not the case. A lot of times it takes a while to draw out the information, identify it, ask the right questions in order to get the right information you need. It's actually a bit of a grueling process, right? So we wanted to make it clear that as BAs, we elicit information, not just gather. information, okay? And it includes interviews, workshops, we'll get to all of that. Then collaboration is also quite telling because it has to do with continuous engagement. It's not a one and done thing. You don't just, meet, have a discussion, meet someone, have an interview, and then that's it. If you need additional information, if something changes, if the scope increases, you're going to need to go back again. And even apart from that, you need to go back to make sure that you actually heard well, or you documented the correct thing, or the documentation was complete, or the documentation is actually what is needed for that project or that work initiative. So collaboration is both of these things, to be honest with you, are not, one and done. They're iterative. You keep going round and round and round and doing them as you need to during the course of the duration of the project. We're going to use project, but it could just be a work initiative. It's not always a project, right? So whatever it is you're doing, it's you keep coming back to these things again. So understanding the process is important because you do it over and over and over again as needed, right? So I just talked about this elicitation, right? This is what stakeholders think um, elicitation or requirements gathering, how it works. You just go around plucking things, but they'll just give you like this full document, or someone just provides all the information you need and you're just collecting. It's so sweet. It's really not. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work to be able to dig deep and draw out the information you want, right? So elicitation really works with precision. As you can see, tools are being used, right? Labor is being exerted. There's a technique techniques that you have to use in order to get what it is you want. This thing he's using may not even be the best tool for him. So that's where our toolkit comes in. We have a number of different tools, a number of different techniques, but it's labor intensive. You have to do the work. Okay, so it's active, it's not passive. You actually have to go out and look for the information. You have to know where to look. You have to know who to ask. You have to know how to draw out that information. It's a skill, and it's a skill that develops the more you do it. You learn, you grow, and you get better at it. Okay, so it's interactive. Some people call BAs investigators. There's an investigative part of what we do. We have to investigate. So that's why, as a BA, you can't be hesitant to ask questions. You can't be quiet. Questions are our bread and butter. Research is what we do because we have to draw out the information we need for the work. And it's not just for us, it's for the entire project. So when you understand how much is on your shoulders, you're not going to be hesitant. You're going to go out there to say, who do I need this information from? And then you find out the best way to get the information from them. And we're going to deal with all of that. Okay, so like I said, so elicitation helps stakeholders articulate their needs. Sometimes they don't even know what it is, the information they should give you. Have you ever spoken to stakeholders and they're like, I don't know what you want from me? I mean, if you tell me what you want from me, I can make it available. But at the moment, what do you need? So sometimes the stakeholders may not even know what information you need from them. So that's why it's important to go to the right people, right? Go to the right people first. So even if you have like a whole bunch of stakeholders, you make sure you go to the right people first, get the right information, and use that information to get additional information from other people as well. So you are actually there to help the stakeholders articulate what their needs are. If there are any hidden there's any hidden data or information, you're digging it out, you're drawing it out, you're making sure that it's part of the project. So it's not like when you guys have worked and then someone says, oh, we forgot something, and it's like, but why didn't we know this initially? So you don't want to be in that position. Okay, so what are we eliciting? Again, this is another image I like to focus on, right? And you can see why projects fail. There are loads of different reasons: communication, inadequate risk management, lack of poor scope definition, other, all of that. but 50% has to do with poor requirements definition. So no requirements or very little requirements. Requirements is another, what did they call it, knowledge area on its own. However, elicitation and requirements go hand in hand, because what you're eliciting is requirements. What are the requirements for this project? What are the business needs? What exactly are we doing? What do we want to achieve? What are the deliverables? What are the stakeholder expectations? What do we need? All those things kind of fall under the umbrella of requirements. And when you don't get the requirements right, that's almost like the beginning of the end for business, for the project. And that's why I believe business analysts will always have a job, because a lot of people who have said it's fine, we don't really need business analysts, they've gone ahead to spend money on projects only to find out, but this isn't what we needed now. What could have just helped us do this thing better? Get a business analyst to do the work for you before you get in. I know you think they're pricey, but what you're going to spend if you don't use a business analyst, my goodness, it's poor business management. So even people who are under the false belief that they won't need business analysts, they'll find out the hard way. It's people that understand the benefit that, like, see, we're not going to have this project without a business analyst, because we'll shoot ourselves in the foot. We need proper requirements definition, and that's what elicitation does. That's what it's about, right? So again, I call it the R word, right? It's the requirements, right? So requirements are features, characteristics. These are deliverables, specs, functionalities. These are, what do we need at the end of the day? What do we want to see? What do we want to be provided for us? What's the outcome of this whole exercise, this project, this initiative, this thing we're working on? What do we want at the end of the day? Those are your requirements, right? So when we have the solution, what does that solution need to include, right? How is it going to perform? What's it going to do? How is it going to change the work processing or the lives or the day-to-day jobs of the end users? Your requirements are so important. And that's what elicitation is. You're eliciting the requirements. What are those business needs, right? So again, at the end of whatever it is we're doing, we have to deliver value. We have to deliver value. And that value is not random. It's not guesswork. It has to be outlined. So there has to be a proper statement to say, this is our need. This is what the solution we're working on. And this is the value that is going to be delivered at the end of the day. It has to be stated. Otherwise, again, guesswork. Because what you think could be a value would be different from what one other person thinks. Remember that image I told you about? Every single um, um, section of business function had a completely different understanding of what was needed. Completely different. And you can't blame them. We're all human beings. We think differently. Our experiences are different. So there has to be one source of truth. And that's where, okay, so when we're done with all of this, what is the end product? What is the value that's going to be delivered? It helps with stakeholder expectation. It helps because your stakeholders can have different expectations. But once you guys say, this is what we're going to deliver at the end of the day, and you make sure that they are all aware, everyone is aware, everyone agrees, then when the product is delivered, that's what we expected at the end of the day. What of your tech team? You tell them you want a product. What are the features of that product? What exactly do you want us to deliver? So the tech team is aware, the project team is aware, the developers are aware, the testers are aware, everybody is aware of what value is going to be delivered at the end of the day. We're all on the same page. And before anyone changes any of those things, there's a process, a change process that they have to go through. And then once that's done, it's circulated as well. Everybody is now aware of the new, what they call it, the new value that is going to be delivered. Again, I just talked about this. It satisfies stakeholders' expectations. The last thing you want is for your stakeholders to tell you, but this is not what we discussed. This is what I was expecting. I was expecting more. I was expecting less. I was expecting blue. You gave me pink. That's the last thing you want. So you want your stakeholders satisfied. This is what we wanted. This is what we got. Okay. Um, and again, so your what you're eliciting also includes business rules, constraints, risks, opportunities, processes, all those different things. All those things drive what the end product is. Your business exists in this ecosystem that is governed by business rules, that is limited by constraints, that has risks, opportunities, all these things. So you have to take all those things into account as well when doing elicitation. Okay. All right. Now, who do we elicit um, all the data and information from? Where exactly are we? Who are we working with? They're stakeholders. They're the requirement owners. We BAs, we are bridges. We are change managers. We don't own the requirements, right? We identify those who own the requirements and we elicit it from them. So your stakeholders are your requirement owners. A stakeholder is anyone who has a vested interest in your project, right? So this can be an individual, it can be a group, it can be internal, it can be external. Again, that's a whole new um, knowledge area. But the reason I'm mentioning all of this, like I said, is because I also wanted to highlight what is um, real world experience of a BA. You can't elicit without stakeholders. That's basically who you get your requirements from, right? So they provide your key requirements. They are key when it comes to refinements, verification, validation, feedback, approvals, continual support. Your stakeholders are key, right? So that's basically the starting point. Who are the stakeholders? Who are my stakeholders, right? What's the level of interest? What's the level of influence? Where do I start from? Who is the project sponsor? Firstly, that's your key. Who is sponsoring this project? Who is driving this? That's a key stakeholder, right? You have, again, that's where your stakeholder map comes in. Yes, these are all my stakeholders, but these ones are key. These ones have the power, these ones have the influence. You want to make sure you know who they are. You're getting the information from them, you're getting your approvals from them, all of that, right? So knowing who your stakeholders are is key. And obviously they come in different, they're all shapes and sizes. So Babok tells you for elicitation and collaboration, the relevant stakeholders are any stakeholder. Any and every stakeholder is relevant to this particular knowledge area. Why? Because this is now where you don't know who the relevant people are. So you now have to start asking. You have to start doing your discovery. Who are those that are integral to who have that information that I want, right? And then once you identify who they are, then you start the process of communicating with them, reaching out to them, and all of that. So any stakeholder, you're like there's no limits, there's no risk, it's any and anybody that is relevant. You now have to decipher who that is. Okay, it could be your product owner, it could be the head of the department, it could be anybody, right? So you have to decipher who they are, but your illustration comes from them. So these are the, although we're talking about groups of people, and obviously we're talking about some external bodies, especially when it comes to regulators, they could be external bodies, but even within those external bodies, they're probably people. But there are other sources of elicitation that are not necessarily human. Okay, so you can elicit requirements from documents and materials, Okay. When a lot of times when I come onto a project and I'm introduced to whoever my project sponsor is, first question, who is my project sponsor? I always ask, is there any documentation you can share with me? Are there any materials, anything? Can I, just to get a jumping off point to understand exactly what this thing is about? Because remember, we're BAs, we're not subject matter experts. Some of us may have domain knowledge, but most of the time we're able to jump into any organization, any business, and start working. And the very first thing we do is research. We want to find out more about the project or the organization or the ecosystem wherever we are, because all these things are integral to the success of the project. So I usually just ask, so is there any documentation? Let me bust your bubble. If you get documentation, you are of most men, of all men, most blessed, because a lot of times there isn't a lot of documentation. I find that when I come onto a project, even if I'm giving documentation, it's very rudimentary. It's very, it's in the early stages. It's raw. It's not really organized. And then I have to be the one to do that work. But remember that box of empty documentation. Once a BA is on the project, that cannot remain empty. You can't do that. We are the ones to make sure that what even the things we elicit are properly documented, because the elicitation process also includes verification. What are they verifying? The documented requirements that you've gotten. So anyway, this is a source of elicitation systems, interfaces. For example, if your project has to do with upgrading a system, or maybe introducing a manual process to an automated process, what it is, you want to understand what the as is process is, what's happening at the moment, what system are they using, how are they currently doing that thing. Maybe they're not even doing it. It might be a new process that you're introducing. Yeah, so then it's good to know that as well, right? So you want to know what the platforms are. So you that's your again, that's your jumping off point. You want to know what the business rules are, policies. I've mentioned that before. You can get you can elicit requirements from observation, right? Sometimes you're working with stakeholders who know how to do what they do, but they don't know how to talk about it. They just do it. It's almost intrinsic. It's almost like they do it. It's almost unconscious. So sometimes when you ask them, so how exactly do you do this thing? They'll just give you such a very brief overview. And that's not what you need. So you just go like, okay, do you know what? Yeah, let me just observe what you're doing. Let me just watch you. Just stay in the background or shadow the person and just observe. And as they're observing, because it's new to you, so you're literally watching and noting everything they're doing. If you have questions, you can ask. Is when you now ask that they'll now tell you, oh, this process or this process or this process. But if you tell them to talk you through it, they may not be able to. So observation is such a powerful tool. Okay. And obviously, external markets, industry standards. Like I said, what if that organization is bringing in something new and they don't even know what they want? They just, okay, we want a system that does ABCD. We've never done it before, but we want a system that does ABCD. You now go out to your contemporaries in the market that are using that system or doing that thing to find out how do they do those things. Yeah, so that's where external sources and industry sources come in. That's where your trends and your benchmark and all those things come into play as well. So remember, we're dealing with a toolkit. So you have all these things in your, think of a plumber. You have all these things around you, your tool bag is when you go and see the problem that you now say, okay, I need a wrench for this, or I need a hammer for this, or I need a screwdriver for this. A screwdriver is not going to do everything. You look at the situation and say, okay, this is the work of, a wrench or something. So that's how we are as BAs. We have a toolkit with loads and loads of tools and techniques. And then based on the situation you face or the circumstance, you're like, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. So that knowledge is really important. It really, really helps. All right. So we're going to the elicitation and collaboration knowledge area has 5 tasks. Yeah, it has 5 tasks. Some people call it PCCM. Yeah, so that's your 5 tasks. The first one is preparing for elicitation, right? So I like how Babok does it because sometimes we skip steps in the real world. But if you know the steps you're supposed to go through, again, you can decide, okay, I don't really need this here. The work has already been done, or I definitely need these steps because they're all very important, honestly. And it helps you do the work better. So even apart from the certification, the knowledge at work is very, very important as well. You may not be telling people, oh, I'm preparing for elicitation, but you know you need to do it. Otherwise, you go into a meeting or you go into an interview, a workshop, and you're not prepared, or you could be better prepared. So this helps you, it prepares you for success. The preparation prepares you for success. So, okay, so the first task is preparation, right? And this is you planning and organizing, firstly, how this information is going to be discovered and who am I going to get it from. So you have to understand what the objectives are. Before you get to this stage, you have to understand what are the objectives first and foremost. What am I doing? Yeah. Remember we talked about delivering value. What value are we going to deliver? What's the solution we're going to deliver at the end of this project? Yeah. So what's the end goal? That helps you plan. If you know where you're going, you plan how to get there. So the first thing is this is what we want to achieve. This is our scope. This is where we're starting. This is where we're ending. People want to use the opportunity to, jam other things in there. We're like, that's out of scope. I'm so sorry. Our scope has been clearly defined. This is our start. This is our end. If you want something different, yeah, it's above my pay grade. This is my scope at the moment. So you know where to start and where to end. Obviously, not do it like that. I'm just talking, please. As a BA, relationship building is very important. I am so approachable at work because I know that helps when I need something as well. So trust me, I'm not. This is just us talking, right? Be as open and as friendly and approachable as possible because you don't want to alienate any of your stakeholders. You want them to be available when you need them. You want, when you reach out to them, you want them to be responsive. So yeah, this is just me talking. Anyway, so again, when you have a plan, you know that every session has its purpose and value. The thing about BAs most of the time is that a lot of the people that have the information are people that are higher up. So BAs, we deal with a lot of executives, a lot of heads of departments, a lot of people in the C-suite. So that knowledge, you have to learn how to use that knowledge and work with these kind of people. Their time is very limited. They don't have time for wasting. They don't like time wasting activities. So they want to know that you're on top of. If you call me for an interview and it's for an hour, that hour is used very, very well. You're not going to waste my time. You do it the first time, you call them for the next meeting, they're not showing up. So you have to make sure that as you're going into every session, you have a plan and a purpose, right? What is the agenda? What is the outcome of this meeting? At the end of this meeting, what do we want to achieve? You have to, not just for you, once you have the goal, you circulate it. You make sure you let the stakeholders, firstly, you've identified who your key stakeholders are. You understand what the plan of each meeting or activity is going to be. You document it and you circulate it before your interviews, your workshops, all of that. You're sending out emails to them and like, hello, my name is Uzo. I'm working on this and this and this project. I've been asked to reach out to you from project sponsor or a key person. They've told me that you're going to be the one to provide A and B information. Could I have a few minutes of your time? Book some time in your diary, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour to go over, this is the proposed agenda. so that at the end of the day, this is what we're getting out of it. And they show up because they know what they're there for. They're not coming into their day and then you now come into a meeting and people are like, I'm so sorry, what's this meeting about? I don't know what this meeting is about, you know. So if someone says that, they've said that before, but all I can do is I can reiterate what I've sent in the email, just tell them, oh, I've sent you the documents in the email. They're probably too busy to have read it. I'm not going to assume, but did I send it? Yes. The only thing is that you didn't read it. No problem. I'm happy to give you a bit of an overview and then I can reshare. If you like, I can reshare the document in the chat so it's available for you. But whatever you need, the information you need, I'm making it available. You have a workshop that's for half a day, you have a workshop that's for a day, you better make sure you've planned that workshop very well so that every time is properly apportioned to all the activities. And all these activities are value driven activities. You know what you want from it. And everybody is on the same page. You have the workshop presentation. Everybody can flick through. They all have the same documents. So no one is unaware of what's happening. It's very, very important. Again, the key point of this is you define your purpose, you define your scope, make sure that your information sources and participants, your techniques, logistics, all of that is properly sorted. Okay. If there are any risks or there's anything that can affect the participation or the information you're going to get out of it, bring it front and center. You want transparency, you want openness, you want to carry everyone along, you want everyone to be aligned, right? So this is really, really important. Okay, so I'm going to go really quickly. I know this is being recorded, so I'll talk fast and you can take time and watch it again if there's anything you missed, just so that we can I'm just aware that time is of the essence. Okay, so the second task is conducting the elicitation itself, right? Now, this is now you've planned. Oh, yeah, let's start doing the thing we said the thing we planned for. This is the doing of it. So you're interacting with your stakeholders, you know what information you want from them, and you're basically going through that process, right? You want to make sure that your information is accurate. You want to make sure it's complete. You want to make sure that the insights that can only be provided by that stakeholder is given to you. And it's at these sorts of meetings, especially when you're planning, but even sometimes the first meetings you have, the one question I ask regularly is there anybody else I need to talk to regarding this? Am I leaving anyone out? In your opinion, you're the SME. I'm just coming into this as a BA. So I'm external to this whole department process, all of that. To your knowledge, is there anyone else you think whose input would be valuable for this? Because this is discovery. I want to find out as much as I can. There's nothing wrong with meeting the person and you find out, oh, okay, the information is not really relevant. At least you know. But what if you don't do that and you go far and then someone tells you, hey, have you reached out to the head of HR? This is their project now. How can you have gone this way without? And then you're slapping your face. You're like, oh my God, how did I do that? You didn't know. So, but as a BA, the way to cover that is to ask the right questions. Who should I invite into this process? I've told you what we want, what we're doing. Based on your knowledge and your understanding, who do you think is missing from this whole process? Who do you think I can, even when I'm inviting them for meetings, the last line there is, if there's anyone else you think would be able to add value or whose input would be able to add insight to this meeting, could you let me know? You can forward this meeting to them or tell me and I'll invite them. It's almost always there in my elicitation process because it's so important to do that because you don't know what you don't know, right? So, um, yeah. So now these are the interviews and the workshops. So you, based on the information you want to get and the stakeholder you're working with, you decide which of these techniques and tools do I need for this, and you can mix and match. You do interview one day, there are loads of stakeholders, maybe you want to bring them together for a workshop. Okay, this is a someone who you can observe, or maybe you want to create a prototype, and then they'll now tell you, okay, change this, add this, do this. So you're the one who decides what works, right? Active listening is so important, right? And then a lot of us, I don't know about you, but I know that I'm not superhuman. So when you bring a lot of different people to the room, they're just talking, and you can't write fast enough. It's not possible. So during these meetings, I always ask them, I hope you guys don't mind if I record this session. Yeah, I record so I can go over it and make sure I capture all the requirements properly. I don't want to leave anything out. I keep saying that my personal principle is I don't mind asking you any question, but I don't want to ask you the same question twice. I want to make sure that if you've answered that question satisfactorily, I don't want to ask you again. I want to make sure I capture it. That's not saying that if you ask a question and I want additional information, I can't ask. Oh, no, that's not saying that. But if you've given me the information I want, I don't want to keep asking the same question again. It's tiring to people. People are busy. So I record these meetings so I can go back again. Now, when you're not in the middle of the thing and you can take time and document everything, you document it. You make sure you capture it, and then you go back to them again to say, we're going to go back to that session again, but make sure you capture it. You ask leading questions. You ask your what, why, how, where questions. These questions are the ones, they're not yes and no questions. They make sure that the people keep talking, right? And then you look at group dynamics, especially when you're having a workshop. Sometimes you have people, the people talking are not the people doing the job, right? They are the heads of the departments. Think of a bank scenario. You have a bank manager, but you have the bank teller who is actually using that application. The bank manager doesn't use that application, but they are the boss of the bank teller. You want the information from the bank teller because that's the system you want to improve. So you want to know that process very well. But because his or her boss is in the room, they're not talking because there's culture, whatever. I can't talk when my boss is there, or gasa, all that kind of thing. Meanwhile, the person that is talking is, I need your approval, but you don't have the information I need. So you have to find a way to, sometimes it could be culture. Some people are very soft spoken, or maybe personality. They are not bold enough to talk in the midst of other people. Then some other people, if you leave them, they're the ones that will keep talking, like, see, after work, we can go into that gist, but right now, I need information. So you, as the facilitator, you make sure that you understand the group dynamics and talk. A nice way of doing it during workshops, we'll get there, or we may not, depending on time, is round robin. You see a group of people and you notice that some people are talking, some are not talking. You make sure you call on I like to hear what everyone thinks. You call this person, what does this person think? It's turn by turn by turn. Once it's turn by turn by turn, everybody understands that everyone has their own turn. So that person that doesn't want to talk for whatever reason will talk, and if you notice that, again, these are just things you observe. So there are techniques to get people talking and get the information you want from the right people and all of that, right? So make sure you facilitate is important. Capture explicit and implicit information, the ones they've told you and the ones you can observe by yourself, right? And then if you need to adjust things, be very, very for lack of a better word, agile or flexible. That's the word I want. Be flexible. If you use this tool and you notice that's not really working, you can switch and use something else. Record and document very, very clearly. All right, moving on. Now, how do we facilitate? I talked about there are loads and loads and loads of different tools and techniques you can use for elicitation. I beg your pardon, not facilitation, elicitation, right? Document analysis, observation, interviews, brainstorming, surveys, questions. There's so many. So many. You have a stakeholder map. You can show the stakeholder map and say, okay, who am I missing? Do I have their names, their roles, is everybody there? Is this correct? And a lot of information, a lot of mistakes that BAs make when they're creating stakeholder lists or registers or map is that they note the name. It's not necessarily the name. Sometimes it's the role. So this task is for the role of head of HR. Head of HR is Janet. Tomorrow, Abiodun can become the head of HR. The fact that the person has left doesn't mean the responsibility has left that role. So as a BA, you capture the role that is relevant and you can put the name, because that's the name is the name of the person there at the moment. But that means that if that person leaves, is transferred, you're not stuck. You know that the responsibility or the stakeholder you want is this particular, the person in this role, head of security or head of data. It can be Abe, it can be whoever. Put the person's name, but please capture the role. It's very, very important. And then you have your all these other techniques, which are very, very important. They're part of your BA toolkit. Now, what exactly does good look like when it comes to requirement documentation? Remember, we're documenting we've conducted the elicitation. What happens with the information you get? You have to document it, because that is going to help you with the next task you're doing, right? So there are many different ways to write good requirements, and I've gone over this before. So while I'll share this for the video, I won't go over it again. It's very important. Requirements are so important. I came onto a work project. It wasn't it wasn't a project per se. It was a piece of work. They asked, "Oh, we need a BA for this," and they gave me what had been called requirements. And I just thought, this was earlier in my career. And I just thought, how can we go? Our requirements have been gotten, let's go. And I called the meeting, like, oh, we just need all these people in the room. And all these people are so busy. And I tried. These two will be available. The third one will not be. These other two, it was long. Eventually, I got all three of them in the meeting. I was like, finally, let's now go through the requirements and make sure that we're all on the same page. I shared the thing. I had sent it to them initially, but again, some people don't open their emails. Open the requirements, and they were like, I don't recognize these requirements. I don't know where these came from. And I was like, I was given these requirements as part of this, deliverables for this task. And then they now told me, I think the person who drafted the requirements I had, not a BA, someone I think she was a product team member. It's like, these requirements are my requirements. So could you make sure that they are approved? Because they were not approved. Oh my goodness, egg on my face. It's like I should have just done that since. I just went back again, did the proper requirements, documented it properly, circulated it. By the time I came back again, we were all on the same page. In fact, that whole process was long, but I mean, so the fact that someone hands you requirement doesn't mean take it and run. I thought requirement that there are things that people call requirements that are not really requirements. So make sure you have the right requirements and they're documented properly. They have all the different elements. What's the description? What's the acceptance criteria? All those different things. Again, I'm not going to go into all of that. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing it at, I'm getting all the requirements up front, or you're doing it iteratively. It's all the same thing, right? Make sure that everyone understands what done looks like. This is our definition of done. This is our definition of ready. Make sure we all understand what it looks like. Everybody has looked through and they're happy with it. Otherwise, it'll be time wasting, and the stakeholders will have issues with it. So now that you've documented your requirements, what next? You confirm, you go back and confirm them. People are talking. You want to make sure that you have the requirements correct, properly documented, they're complete. You have to make sure that the information you have is validated, right? And this is what the stakeholder meant when they said it. Remember, they are the owners. So they are the ones that we sign off on it, right? And then once you do that, there's no hesitancy. We're all on the same page, right? I remember doing this exercise and writing the requirements, going through all the different stakeholders, validated it with them, got their sign of all of that. And then we're meetings. And then this thing came up and they were like, oh, we brought in some new stakeholders. We had a change project manager, but we brought in an IT project manager for the implementation. And we're like, oh, we need to go back to the stakeholder to find out this information. I was like, no need. this is the information you want. Oh, are you sure? We want to go back to valid. I was like, if you want to do that, feel free. I literally just screenshotted the requirement and all the different columns, including their approval, the name of the person that's supposed to go to, the person's approval. And I pasted it there. I was like, if you want to go back to ask the same information we've gotten again, be my guest. I'm not going to do it. I've gotten it before. This is what I have. So there was that confidence that this thing they were asking for, I knew it. And they would always include me in the meetings. So it's like, oh, Uzo, what about this requirement? Do we have anything regarding it? I was like, yes, we do. Do we have any? Yes, we do. Because I'd gotten it. It was very detailed, So there's that confidence. And then because they could see the approval, they could see the process. Of course, they didn't go back to the person to ask now, who has time to waste time? They could see that the information had been gotten, it had been approved. There was no need to do that work all over again. So that's the confidence you bring with you as a BA. Regardless of where that project goes, these requirements have been, if anything changes, the onus is on them to let you know that it has changed. But this is what you gave me. This is what I'm working with. If we need to change it, then there's a change process we need to go through. But this is what we're working with at the moment. Okay. Again, verify your understanding, make sure there are no assumptions. If there are gaps, inconsistencies, misinterpretations, make sure you get it. And it builds trust in you as a BA. They're going to want to work with you because they know that you're detailed, that you go through the process. They may lift up their nose at the process, or because they don't want to go through, but there's that confidence that you went through the process, so you're working with valid information. We're all working with valid information. Yeah. So then communicating the business analysis information, right? So once you've documented it, you now do your analysis, right? To make sure that it is properly, it's clear, it's complete, and you can use it to make your decisions. I just talked about using it to make decisions, regardless of the fact that that stakeholder wasn't there. We were able to go to the external vendors and tell them categorically, this is what we wanted, because we had that clear requirement from the stakeholder. We didn't have to go back to them again. We just carried on working with confidence, right? And you make sure that it's, again, this is another very important thing. They'll ask you, have you dealt with technical stakeholders and non-technical stakeholders? They like their documents in different ways, right? Non-technical stakeholders just want clear English, put it in everyday language for me, simple language. I'm not technical, but the technical guys want to talk about, your APIs and your upsetting and your, they also want the information in a different way as well, and I let them know, if you guys want something technical, there's probably a solution architect. I can give you the information in simple language, or I can create a wireframe for you. I can create a prototype for you, and all of that based on the requirements we have. So there are different stakeholders have different, there are different ways of communicating information to them. And again, communication, that's even another level. Communication, again, is how do your stakeholders want you to reach out to them, right? Via email, Teams, phone calls. Do they want you to walk up to their desk in the office and have a face-to-face conversation with them? How often do they want information from you? Because you don't want information overload. If they're not directly invested, then if you're just informing them, then you do it sporadically, only as needed. But if you need them to be carried day by day by day by day, then that's a different category. So how do you communicate this information to them? You have your different stakeholders, and you know how each one prefers their communication. You know how often, you know the channels. All these things are important, because remember, you want to make sure that your stakeholders are happy. You build a good relationship with them. Otherwise, working with them would be like pulling teeth. The last thing you want is to be sending someone message, person just ignoring you like that. You don't want that to happen. It happens. Sometimes it's above you can't do anything about it. At that point, you escalate it, because what am I going to do? And all of that. But you try your best. What I do most of the time is, when I'm meeting with them initially, I let them know. So I've had this first workshop with you or interview with you. I'm going to come back to you to validate this information. Is that okay? And they're like, okay, fine, fine, no problem. How do you prefer? How would you like me to communicate with you? Are you available by email? What do you prefer? They'll tell you what they prefer. Oh, please, send me the email for record. But if you can just pick up the phone and talk to me about it, I'll prefer that. Or I'm always available on Teams. I'm always moving around. I may not have my emails accessible, but if you send me a message on Teams, I'll respond. So it's at that point, it's not guesswork. We don't know. We're not mind readers. You ask. So how do you want this information to be communicated with you? And most people will tell you, and you document it. You have a communication plan, because sometimes you can have tens and hundreds of stakeholders. Yes, hundreds plus of stakeholders, because a large project can go across so many different people. No one expects you to remember all of these things. So as you're getting the information, you're documenting it. So you can go back to your communication plan or your stakeholder register to say, okay, this is what they told me and this is how I've documented. And someone else comes onto the project, you tell them, okay, this is how you communicate with this stakeholder. This is our RACI. We only want them to be informed. We may need to consult them. They are the ones that are accountable. They are the ones that are delivering on this thing, so they're responsible. All of that information, very, very important information. And then obviously it's all part of stakeholder management. Again, getting jobs as a BA, because none of us is doing certification just to keep it in our pocket. We want jobs, obviously. So most of the time, they'll ask you questions regarding stakeholder management. Remember what I told you. Sometimes the holding.
Education, yeah. Oh.
Okay, sometimes the people who have the information you want are senior people. So they want to make sure that they're bringing you in. You're not going to go and be harassing or embarrassing the people you're going to talk with. You know how to talk to senior stakeholders, key stakeholders, even the people that are not as key, because they're also important as well. So managing stakeholders is really, really, really very important. It's important to build trust. I've talked about transparency. I've talked about all the things I've talked about. They're all listed here. So I'm just sharing them with you. So obviously you have it available in the recording. Very, very important. Now, again, because elicitation is key to successful project, it can also be very challenging because you're dealing with people most of the time. Yes, we have other sources of elicitation and all of that, but or to get the requirements, but the main stakeholders are people. So you have to understand how to deal with them, right? It's so important. Again, I told you sometimes they can identify someone as a stakeholder, a subject matter expert, and they don't know the information you want from them. So you might have to lead that information to tell them, okay, this is what I'm working on. This is what we want to achieve. Like I said, they've told us that you're the one responsible for the finance in this department. Could you let me know? And then I start to ask your questions. I'll go through some of those questions as well. When you're going through elicitation activities, remember that there's knowledge that is tacit. That means that it's intrinsic. Sometimes you have to watch the person in order to get that knowledge out, because they may not realize that they have that knowledge. They've been doing it for so long, it has become so a part of them, and a subconscious part of them, that you as an external person may have to observe them in order to pick some of those things out. So it's not like they don't want to share that information with you. They've been doing this thing for years. Which part of my job do you want me to share with you? I can't tell you everything I do. So you have to be specific sometimes. So sometimes you're dealing with stakeholders and it almost seems like they're being difficult. They're not. They don't know what you want from them. I can't tell you everything I do. So you have to narrow it down. You have to be specific. You have to ask the right questions in order to get the information you want from them, right? Know that people have competing priorities. So the fact that your project is important to you, they have 1,001 things they're doing as well. So value their time. Remember all the things I talked about, planning and letting them know what you want from them. All of that is very important. There are things like domain complexity, change, language, engagement, so many different things, right? Then when it comes to collaboration, again, conflicting agendas. You may be talking with someone and there's politics happening that affects your project that you're not even aware of. Sometimes you have to hear what is not being said. Emotional intelligence, just hear some things, get some information, and then handle people. There was a BA I worked on and I worked with, and she was talking to me about a project. They brought her on to work on an HR project. That HR project has already been attempted previously and was unsuccessful. So the head of HR, who was responsible for that, had some baggage from all of that, and she was just projecting it on this very poor BA. So we're like, okay, now we know, right? There's no need to be upset. It's human nature. You're dealing with people. How do we manage this situation? Because this person is a key stakeholder and they cannot be a blocker. So how do we manage this? And we brainstormed, did a few things, did worked out, went, got some, just worked around it basically, right? And trust. Sometimes they may not trust that you know what you're doing. I don't know you from Adam. Who are you? So all these things you're doing builds trust that this person knows what they're doing. I may not know them, but it's obvious from what their communication and what they've shared that they know what they're doing. Poor communication flow. I can tell you stories about this. Came on a project once, and we just kept getting this very funny emails from these people like, have you informed this person about this project? I don't think they're aware. Could you inform them? And we're like, yeah, we're going to inform them. It's fine. We just found out that we needed to inform them recently. Like I said, when asking, is there anyone we need to involve, and someone mentioned them, we're like, okay, this is still discovery, and make sure you involve them in the thing. And it was just so very cryptic. And then so I had a meeting with a project manager. We're like, okay, we're going into the meeting with this person. This late person is Oga. And like, please, before we start, let's start with letting them know what the project is about, that we're not changing anything they currently do, that our project has to do with an additional application that is going to feed off theirs. We're not touching what they do, but we're just introducing a new application for a different group, a smaller group of people, but it's going to feed into their own application, but it's not going to touch on what they do. So we just want to understand what the integration requirements are. Do you know that once this thing was said, hey, the way everybody's face, strong face, everyone just melted. People started laughing. Like, these people thought we were coming to come and change their process. And they were just, like, who are you? Where are you coming from? All of that. So all these things are poor communication. No one informed them. So we made sure that we were very open and transparent. Make sure that you know who your decision makers are, because sometimes you need for a decision to be made before the project goes further. Everyone's like, so who is going to make this decision? You have to find. That's why your stakeholder map is so important. Okay. Feedback fatigue. If the person doesn't need regular information, give them information as needed, sporadically, every now and then. The people that need to be carried along, 100%. So I was like, why is this meeting holding? You didn't introduce, you didn't involve me. Please, could you invite me to that meeting? I need to know what's happening. This person is a carry along kind of person. So my is like, why are you including me in this? I don't need to be here. So all these things are things you need to know in order to have good collaboration with your stakeholders. Very quickly, I am very aware that time is far spent. So I'll go through these next slides very, very quickly. Like I said, I wanted to bring in everyday context. So these are some questions you can ask to understand the context. I beg your pardon. So this is context, to understand the context of the project, to get clarification. These are some questions you can ask to understand stakeholder perspectives. Remember, stakeholders are coming from different perspectives. They're not all stakeholders are not equal. They don't have the same outlook or perspective. So you have to get everyone's perspective in order to get the full picture. So these are some questions you can use. For tacit knowledge, like I said, people that have the knowledge intrinsically, these are some questions you can use to get it out of them. For validation and confirmation, these are some questions you can get. To get buy-in, these are some questions you can ask as well. All right, so I think we can now do our exercise. Before we do the exercise, does anyone have any questions, comments, anything at all they want to ask, they want clarification on? Because we're now at the tail end of our presentation. Anybody?
Hello,
I
can
can't
you hear
see
me,
you,
please?
so just unmute and ask.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much for the interesting class. I have some questions here. Although while you were speaking, you've also answered quite a lot of them. So when you started, the first thing you said was that between the certification and real life challenges, that there seems to be a gap. On a scale of 1 to 5, how is that gap? And what do you think can be done, to reduce that gap so that there is this sync in theory and practical as much as possible? Then you talked about elicitation and require. We also have something added to this, which is alignment. Okay, I think you've answered that. Then you've also given I think an example of this, my third question, which is have you ever been in a gathering where someone just became disrespectful and maybe.
Is it just me? I can't hear anything again. Hello? Hello?
I think it's from my end.
Okay. Do you know what? Yeah, let me start by answering the question she asked, and then maybe when she comes back, she'll ask the final one. So the theory and the practical issue. So for the certification, the Babok is your single source of truth. The way they have ordered the knowledge areas, all your tasks, all your elements, all your tools, all your techniques, that's the way to do it, right? That's in order to pass the certification. But when you come into practice, you may sometimes there's no time to follow the thing sequentially, right? That you can work with shortcuts. Maybe your organization is not that structured. So they may not require you to do all those things. But remember, you are the expert, the business analysis expert. And all these tools are in your toolkit. Remember the example I gave. A plumber has loads of different tools, but based on the situation or circumstance, you decide what tool works best for that situation or circumstance. So there is no way to build to bridge the gap. Another example I want to give you, right? If you are a novice cook, you have a recipe and they're telling you put half a cup of this, put a pinch of that. This is how you measure it. If you've not done that thing before, you have to follow the recipe sequentially. But some of our mothers, grandmothers, some of ourselves, we just look and know the salt is enough, the pepper is enough, the this, and that thing is coming out like a chef cooked it. But if they ask you how much pepper and how much curry did you put in that thing, you may not be able to say because you've done it so much that you know how to do it so well. So that's the example between theory and practical knowledge. There are things that come up when you're practicing everyday situations that you may just need and to talk through another BA who is more experienced. Say, have you ever experienced this thing? How did you handle it? Babok may not have covered that situation. They can't cover all situations, but they've given you the sequence of how things should be. In order to pass their exam, you must give it to them the way they gave it to you, in the same words they use, the same way. There is no going around it. No, so it's life. It's a fact of life. Practice and theory are two different things. For academic knowledge, give them what they ask from you. For practical knowledge, use your skill, use your BA toolkit, use your knowledge, use your emotional intelligence, and decide what works in that situation. But to be honest with you, I find that working with Babok helps me a lot. It helps me not skip steps. It helps me, even if I have to do it for myself. I may not come out to tell people that I'm doing a particular thing, but just creating a stake. Nobody will ask you for a stakeholder map. But because I need to work with those stakeholders, that stakeholder map will help me, the BA. So I have to create it for myself. If someone comes and asks you about it, fair enough. Same thing with the communication plan. It's just to document things so you don't forget. You can't put everything in your head. So even though some of these things are um, theoretical and academic, they actually help you when you do it. So I try as much as possible not to skip the steps. I use all the steps as much as possible. I may not always be able to, but I use the steps. And then if I come across a situation, I use the best tool in my toolkit to resolve it. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Any
Yes,
other questions?
yes.
Okay, good, good.
Yes, thank you very much. I
You're
still have
welcome.
maybe two or three or more questions. Now, I'll
Okay.
just quickly go through them. So, when you are doing the elicitation, you mentioned there's maybe different groups, in the organizations. Do you do together or you do differently, and then you now put all of them together? I just want to understand how you do that process. Maybe for those working in a particular department, do you do for them differently, or you just put everybody in the room after you have done for each of them? Then you've answered this question where I wanted to ask, have you been held by just one important stakeholder? And you mentioned you will escalate it. Then the C-suite communication strategy. Is there any 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 help you can offer here? Because that's a whole different language entirely. Then you said something like, hear what is not being said. Okay, when you hear what is not being said, how do you include it in that? Do you include it in that documentation? And if you do, how do you clarify it with the stakeholders? Those are the other questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let me see if I can answer that. You're like, okay, how do you determine who to bring into the room for elicitation processes? Again, you play it by ear. There's sometimes that you need to bring as many people in the room. Maybe time is of the essence, and you can't really meet with all of them one by one by one. You bring them together. Sometimes you can't bring everybody together. You look at all their diaries, there's no time that is good for everybody. So you're like, okay, do you know what? Yeah, let me just take you one by one by one. I'll find the time. It's a longer process, obviously, but I mean, you can't help it. So it's sometimes you can't, there's nothing you can do. I would love to bring all these stakeholders together in one meeting and bring them in for an hour, bring them in for an hour and a half, but there's no time in their calendar. So I have to work with what I have. And then sometimes if you're having a workshop, you make sure that those that are in the room, remember you have a plan. There's something you want to get out of that workshop. At the end of the day, there's an output you want. Who is important to get that output? That's the person you bring into the room. If I don't need you to get this output, why am I wasting your time and mine? So that's why your planning and preparation is so important. What do I want? This meeting I'm having, what is the purpose? When you find out what the purpose is, then you know who you're bringing into the room. Do I need technical information? Who are my technical SMEs? Do I need data? Do I need HR? Do I need admin? Who do I need in the room? Okay, so I have a meeting with admin, but admin says they're not able to answer security questions. So I have to bring a security SME in to answer, because the security question is not in a vacuum. The security question is based on the admin's role. So I have to bring the security SME to the same meeting as the admin person. So when the admin is saying, okay, this is the thing, and then the security guy is like, okay, these are the security requirements for this application that you're trying to get. So again, you each situation is different. That's why it's important to have your full toolkit, and then you plan. As I told you, some people don't like planning, they don't like preparation, but your planning and your preparation is so important, because that's what tells you who you need in that meeting. And then sometimes you're like, okay, fine, I'd like to have a workshop, but the people I need are not available. So I have to break it down to individual interviews. Or this person, the task I need from them, I have to watch them doing it. There's no bringing them for an interview. If they have to talk me through what they're doing, it won't be possible. So I have to watch them. So when you know what you want to get, then you know what tool or technique to help you get it. Learn all the techniques, learn all the tools, and then when you come into a particular situation, you say, okay, this is what I want to get, and this is the best tool to help me get it. The other question you asked me has to do with, I'm so sorry, could you remind me?
Okay, I
Or have
asked
I
about
answered
the
it already?
C-suite communication strategy, and I also asked about how do you document what you said, hear what is not being said. So how do you
Yes.
include that in your documentation?
So sorry, what strategy, communication strategy? CC, what? I missed that.
C-suite.
Oh,
For example,
C-suite. In in
yes.
in organizations are different. The way they communicate are different. In some organizations, they want you to address the person as sir, Oga, Mr. Such and such. In some other people, the CEO, global CEO is working and saying, oh, hi, Jim. Hi, Ben. It's different. But you have to understand, once you understand stakeholder management, it applies to everybody. It's not like, oh, you're going to be talking to this other person, rarefied air. There are some people that are down to earth. They like joking. It doesn't matter that they are the boss of all the bosses. They're humorous. If they come into the meeting and they're cracking jokes, you better crack jokes with them. Or how now? How is everything? So my people are coming in and they're like, wait, what are we doing here? Could we please get started? Of course, no problem. Let's get started. And so it's a case by case basis. But a lot of times when you work with them, you're able to understand that it is not a one size fits all for all these people. Stakeholder management is stakeholder management. Don't be thrown by, oh, this person is a C-suite person or whatever. I just said that because you have to be aware of it, not that you have to pander to them or treat them in a no. Some other people, if you start doing that, they're like, I don't even want to be around this person. Be genuine, be real, but just be aware that this person's time is actually very valuable. They may not have the time for it. A lot of times I take 15-minute meetings. Quick, you can find 15 minutes, 15 minutes as what I can get, I'll get because I know that this person is not available. So sometimes that's all it is. So it doesn't mean, anything too crazy. Then unspoken communication. Sometimes, right? Unspoken things that are unspoken are negative or conflicting things. Maybe you come into a meeting and you see two stakeholders and they're griping. They're not coming out to say anything to each other, but they're just some comments are flying that you're like, something is going on here. It's not like you're going to document it to say this person. There are some things you may not want to know and not document, right? A very funny story, right? I was in a meeting with some younger BAs and they created a stakeholder map and they put, low interest, low power and all of that. I think they put one of the testers in that category and they shared it with their whole project team. The testers are like, I'm sorry, why am I low and low? The testers took serious offense. So I'm like, hey, it's emotional intelligence now. You don't, there's some things you don't show to show someone, oh, you're not important, you're low. I don't really need to consider what you're doing. And the person feels they're integral to your, and they are because you need testers. So some of these things, it's not like you document them, but maybe next time you if you want to have a meeting with these people, you may not necessarily bring them in the same meeting together because you know that there's their negative feelings there, or you may look for someone who is a boss over them because you're a BA now. How am I going to be managing these two people? You may need to bring the project sponsor in or someone who has a bit of authority over them to kind of manage. So you know that there's negativity here. Something this person doesn't is a blocker to this country, to this project. You don't necessarily go and write and distribute, oh, the HR manager is a blocker because of what they did in the past. No, you don't want to do that. Again, you don't want to alienate people, right? But you take note of it and you may have conversations. Remember, you're not doing this work alone. You have your project sponsor, you have your project manager. It could be something you can mention. Again, very carefully, politics and all these things are important, but you take note of it. And if you want to get the best out of them, you're like, okay, maybe I don't need to bring these two people in the same meeting because if they are, we may not get anything done. They are just griping at each other and all of that. So it's those sorts of things. Requirements have to be validated and verified. So if it's a requirement, then you write it down. If it's not a requirement, it's just you notice that there's bad blood here, or there's something, you take note of it now. You're not unaware of these things, and you learn to work around it or manage it as best as you can, or ask someone, how do I navigate this, situation, just so that it won't be a blocker to my project. But it doesn't mean that you're going to write down those things. Please, yeah, put yourself, as BAs, we put ourselves in the shoes of the other person. Yeah, and so you always look from that person's perspective. So please, if you know that someone does something like that to you, you don't want to see your name where they say this person is a blocker to this project. Please don't put another person's name to say this person is a blocker to this project. If you're going to do it, keep it to yourself, but just take note of it and use it. Make wise decisions going forward to make sure that you take these things into account and you try and navigate around it as best as you can. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you very much.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, it's almost time. Okay. Guys, what I'll do for the next one, I'll just share this with you because again, this is recorded. So remember I shared
I think there's a question in the chat room.
Okay.
You have not answered my question, and it's very important.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Please, what's the question?
I dropped it on the chat, but I can read it for you.
Yes, if you don't mind. Before we get to your question, let me do something very quickly. Yeah, I just want to, these are the questions I shared initially. So I just want it to be recorded and I'll stop sharing and come onto the board, okay? So this is the first scenario. This is the second one. And that's it. Okay. So let me stop sharing and come to so go ahead. Let me not keep you guys waiting. Go ahead and ask the question, but I'm here now.
Thank you for the presentation. For me, I think justice has been served to this topic. My question is, how does elicitation strategy change, especially when senior stakeholder dominates conversation and silence operational users? I don't know whether you understand.
Okay, let me see the question. Okay. Again, for one thing I like about being a BA is for everything we're required to do, there are techniques and there are tools, right? We're not left to figure things out on our own. So there's some techniques you can use where you have senior stakeholders who dominate conversations. Number one can be have a meeting with people in the same seniority level. So if it's a senior person, you can have meetings with people in that level. So nobody's intimidated by anybody else. This is like a senior heads, whatever. We're all talking at that level. If you know you need to bring someone in that is a bit junior, then you're aware of that situation. One of the things I mentioned is having round robin, using the round robin technique. The round robin technique is going round that room to say everybody must talk. So when you finish talking, call the next person. Let the person say, I don't have anything to say. It's better than most people will not say, I don't have anything to say, because your boss is there. You have something to say. So a lot of times what they say will be important. So you make sure that everybody talks. That's one technique. Another technique can be breakout rooms. You have a workshop. It's okay, we're all going to break out into different rooms. And you break them out into places where they're more comfortable to talk. And then you now bring it out. So there are different techniques to use when people are talking. Another technique is time boxing. For every conversation, is time boxed. So you can even have like an alarm that will play after 10 minutes, because you know that this person, if you leave them, they are still talking for 20 minutes. So there are different techniques you can use. So, okay, thank you so much for that topic. Oh, we really appreciate it. Next, we're moving on to, and then you move. So there are so many different things you can use for some of these things. There are loads and loads, and I've just given you a few. But these are some things, and it's not even just that the person is dominant. There can be that power dynamic in the room. Remember your stakeholder map. There can be cultural dynamics in the room. Maybe someone from Nigeria, we're very, very, we respect authority a lot. Maybe someone from India, that kind of, you have a woman in the room and she's like, oh, all these guys, maybe they're they're introverts. They don't like talking out loud. So it could be 101 different reasons, but you're observing. Remember, you're facilitating. You're not the one, you want to get information from people. So you're the one facilitating. So you're looking around, you're observant, you're actively listening, you're watching the dynamics in the room. You already know who is who. You know their roles, you know your organogram. This person is the boss of this other person, and this other person is from here. So you're watching everything, you're observant, and then you're able to be flexible with your tools as and when needed. Yeah. Was that helpful? Thank you very much. Okay. You're welcome. Okay, so the previous slide. I think I went through all the slides, so I think I was able to capture all of them. Gracious. Can we see sample of the document before the end of the session? The sample of which document exactly, Paul? Which document would you like to see?
Thank you. I mean, like sample of the requirement that you've gathered. You can see like a prototype, how it look like. Maybe when you were engaging any stakeholder, how the samples look like.
Okay, I don't think I have any of those templates available. But again, remember, I probably didn't say this, but as BAs here, templates and documents are available. Sometimes you work in an organization and you can ask for their templates and you can ask for documents. And if they don't have, you can go online and see what is available online, then tailor it to suit your organization. It's not a one size fits all. I've worked in an organization in several different projects, and I can tell you that from project to project to project, even within the same organization, it's different. Not to talk about different business units or different organizations. So what works for one may not work for others. You, again, as a BA, with your preparation and your planning, you know what you need. So you get the tool to service your needs. Remember, you're not contorting yourself to fit the tool. You know what you need to achieve. Then the tool helps you get it out. Remember that image I showed you of the guy digging? He knew he needed to get under the soil to get the requirement diamond. So what's the best tool for me? Do I need a shovel? That's to take too long. Do I need a drill? That will take too long, right? So you have loads and loads of tools. You, based on your individual situation, you get the tool that serves you best. And that's why learning is so good. That's why all the materials we have is so good. Talking with other BAs, the community we have here as IIBA. You may be going through a situation at work. Drop it there to say, guys, I have to elicit sorry, has anyone worked on discovery before? How did you do it? What templates did you use? Can we have a conversation? So make use of the community as well. No one expects you to know everything. Based on experience. So if you need anything, you can do your research, go online, search, or ask the community, and there are people that will be able to help you. I hope that helps. Any other questions? All right.
Okay, please, can we have the presentation slides?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
I'm happy. I'll send it to Tokwe, and then he can share it with everybody. Thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed this. This was my first time taking the tutorial, so I really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you guys for your time. I hope you got value out of it. And yeah, have a wonderful evening and best regards. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope BA has something on corporate politics. Maybe we can do something on that. Thank you.
That's a really nice idea. Really nice idea.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you guys. All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.